Welcome back. In our last video, we have seen the pictorial presentation about Sufism. Today, we will discuss about the concept in detail with textual reference. Let's start with textual reference. As I already told that Sufism and Islam, these are very interlinked with each other. The saints had much in common with the Sufis, and it is believed that they adopted many ideas of each other. Sufis were Muslim mystics. Islamic mystic approach is called Sufism. They rejected outward religiosity and emphasized love, devotion to God, compassion towards all fellow human beings. Here, like Bhaktism, Sufism is also talking about the universal peace and the fraternity and the feeling of love. Islam propagated strict monotheism or submission to one God. In the 8th and 9th centuries, religious scholars developed different aspects of the holy law, and that holy law book is called Shariat, and the theology of Islam. While the religion of Islam gradually became more complex, Sufis provided it with an additional dimension that favored a more personal devotion to God. The Sufis often rejected the elaborate rituals and codes of behavior demanded by Muslim religious scholars. Here lies the difference with orthodox Islamic approach and the Sufi approach. They sought union with God much as a lover seeks his beloved with disregard for the world. In this case, like the saint poets, the Sufis, same way, like the Bhakti also, we have seen that the saints are writing lyrical poems, and they are singing all those poems in praise of God. Here also Sufis too composed poems expressing their feelings, and a rich literature in prose, including anecdotes and fables, developed around them. Some great Sufis of Central Asia were Ghazali, Rumi, Sadi. Like the Nathpanthi, Siddhya and Yogis, the Sufis too believed that the heart can be trained to look at the world in a different way. They developed elaborate methods of training using zikr. What is the meaning of zikr? It is a chanting of a name or sacred formula, and then contemplation, sama is the meaning singing, raksh, that means dancing, and discussing of parables, breath control, etc. These are all the part of the methods of Sufis. Here I must mention about one point, that all Sufi followers or the Sufis were not having the same concept, or they are not having the same method. Some of the things are common. In this way, under the guidance of a master or peer, the followers, they actually prepared themselves to move forward with this kind of religious thoughts to influence their personal feelings and the devotion towards ultimate God. Thus emerged the silsilas. The peers are giving that traditional training or that techniques or methods they were teaching, and in this way the silsilas actually grown. Silsila is a spiritual genealogy of Sufi teachers, each following a slightly different method, and these methods are called tariqa. And this tariqa including instruction, ritual practices, which I already referred. You can see that picture. This picture is actually giving us the different kind of technique or the methods usually used by so many Sufi saints. In Kashmir, the Rishi order of Sufism flourished in the 15th and 16th centuries. This order was established by Sheikh Nuruddin Wali, was also known as Naud Rishi, and had a deep impact on the life of people in Kashmir. A number of shrines dedicated to Rishi saints can be found in many parts of Kashmir till date. Now I'm moving to the next slide. You can see a large number of Sufis from Central Asia settled in Hindustan from the 11th century onward. 11th century, this is famous of so many Sufi saints. Actually, during the 11th century, when the Delhi Sultanate, it has founded its foundation in Delhi as well as India, that time itself the number of Sufi saints, they also settled down in India, and the concept of Sufism is also propagated with a very strong notion. A large number of Sufis from Central Asia settled in Hindustan from the 11th century onwards. This process was strengthened with the establishment of Delhi Sultanate, when several major Sufi centers developed all over the subcontinent. Among them, the most important was the Silsila, Chishti Silsila. It was the influential orders, and it had teachers like Khwaja Mainuddin Chishti of Ajmer, then Kutubuddin Bakhtiar Kaki of Delhi, Baba Farid of Punjab, Khwaja Nizamuddin Auliya of Delhi, and Band Nawaz Gisudaraz of Gulbarga. Among them, these famous Sufi saints were very prominent. Here we are getting very important and very relevant term, that is hospices. Hospices means the house of rest for the travelers, especially one kept by a religious order. So the same kind of like we are having Sarai Khana or the rest house, it is something like that, but it is mainly built for the religious travelers. The Sufi masters held their assemblies in their kankhas or the hospices. Devotees of all description, including members of the royalty and nobility, other ordinary people also flocked to this kankhas. Here they are discussing about the spiritual matters, sought the blessings of the saints, and solving their worldly problem, or simply attending the music or the dance sessions. Often people attributed Sufi masters with miraculous powers that could relieve others of their illness or troubles. The tomb or dargah of a Sufi saint became a place of pilgrimage to which thousands of people, all faiths, thronged. So here you can see the picture. It's a kind of Mazar Sharif or Dargah where so many people visited, and as well as now also these places are having same importance. And here from all background visitors are coming. So now we are here. I already discussed about one Central Asian famous Sufi saint, that is Jalaluddin Rumi. He was the great 13th century Sufi poet from Iran. He has written his all write-up in Persian language, and here he talked about the supreme God, which is actually situated inside our heart. You are nowhere supposed to go to find out God. There is nothing absolute any kind of divine thing is not there outside any periphery, rather you can say it is inside us. See here, from your book you can see this thing, that the finding the Lord, here he has referred about that. I looked into my heart, in that his place I saw him, in no other place, rather inside us. So from here itself we can understand Sufism is a very secular religious notion, and which is also given emphasis on humanity, eternal love and devotion. Here Bhakti also taught us regarding this thing. Languages and the way of talking or instructions are different, but the notion is same. Now here we can start with the next part of this religious movement or the development, that is the new religious developments in North India. We have discussed about the Bhaktism, which has propagated in South India, and later on it has spreaded towards North India. That notion we will start once again, how it became more important and how it has affected the society, etc. The period after the 13th century saw a new wave of Bhakti movement in North India. Yeah, the time is very important, that is 13th century. This was an age when Islam, Brahmanical Hinduism, Sufism, various strands of Bhakti and the Nathpanthi Siddhas and Yogis influenced one another. New towns and kingdoms, those also emerged, and people were taking up new professions and finding new roles for themselves. Especially craftspersons, peasants, traders and laborers thronged to listen to these new saints and spread their ideas. Like Kabir and Baba Guru Nanak, who rejected all orthodox religions. Others like Tulsidas, Surdas accepted existing beliefs and practices but wanted to make this assemblies to all. Tulsidas conceived of God in the form of Rama. Tulsidas' composition, a famous composition Ramcharitmanas, which is written in Awadhi language, a language used in eastern Uttar Pradesh, is important both as an expression of his devotion and as a literary work. Now I am coming to the next name, that is Surdas. He was also an ardent devotee of Krishna. His compositions compiled in 3 parts, that is Sur Sagara, Sur Saravali and Shahitya Lahari, which express his devotion towards Krishna. Contemporary to this Tulsidas and Surdas, another name we can say above from Assam, that is Sankaradeva, late 15th century, who emphasized devotion of Vishnu and composed poem and plays in Assamese. He began to practice of setting up Namghar, or the houses of recitation and prayer, a practice that continues to till date. Namghar, houses of recitation, is very common. Nowadays it is also there. The Vaishnavit, who are the follower of Chaitanya Deva, they are also fond of or practicing this kind of manner. This tradition also included saints like Dadu Dayal, Ravidas, Mirabai. Mirabai was a Rajput princess married into the royal family of Mewar in 16th century. We are coming little bit later time. We are talking about the 16th century. Mirabai became a disciple of Ravidas, a saint from a caste considered untouchable. Still, he was the guru of Mirabai. She was devoted to Krishna and composed innumerable bhajanas expressing her intense devotion. Mira Ki Bhajan is very famous. Her songs was openly challenged the norms of the upper caste and became popular with the message of Rajasthan and Gujarat. And the songs and the bhajanas are actually orally transmitted from one generation to another generation. Later on it has been written actually we can say the later on the written part we are getting. A unique feature of most of the saints in that their works were composed in regional languages and could be sung. They became immensely popular and handed down orally from generation to generation. Poorest, most deprived communities and the women transmitted these songs, often adding their own experiences. Songs as we have them today are as much a creation of these saints as of the generation of people who sang them. They have become a part of our living popular culture. So from here we are getting so many names who are the part of these bhakti, new strands of bhakti and Sufi movement in northern India especially. And the time frame we already have started from that is 11th century to 16th century, and we concluded up to Mirabai. Today our discussion will be our discussion will conclude over here. Before I conclude the session, I want to refer to things that after my video session you will be getting to case study which is based on from your text, the information available from your text, that is the closure loop to Kabir and Baba Guru Nanak. On the basis of that, your work will be to read the things carefully and prepare at least 5 questions from each of the case study. You should find out the answer. You will actually, I am very much hopeful that you are able to find out the answer from this passage. But next video I am going to discuss about this Kabir and Guru Nanak in detail. But this is your turn. You need to find out some question from that particular part and prepare your lesson nicely. Today up to this and learn the lesson with concept. Thank you. Goodbye.